I am so pleased to introduce a gentleman here tonight, Alan Quist, who is a great friend of the Tea Party. And he has spoken at our Tea Party meetings many times. He's been at our April 15th rallies and spoken. And we absolutely love Alan Quist. But a little about Alan. Alan Quist is a retired professor of American government at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota, and a widely recognized writer and speaker. He is author of 5 books, the most recent being America's Schools, The Battleground for Freedom. Quist authored the best-selling book, Fed Ed, The New Federal Curriculum and How It's Enforced, which is in its 3rd printing. Alan Quist served 3 terms in the Minnesota House of Representatives from 1983 to 1988. He chaired the Social Services Subcommittee and was also a member of the House Education Committee. Alan Quist played an influential role in legalizing homeschools in Minnesota. He was the Republican-endorsed candidate for Minnesota governor in 1994 and was one of 7 delegates elected from Minnesota to the White House Conference on Families in 1980. Alan Quist holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Gustavus Adolphus College in St. Peter, Minnesota, a Master of Arts degree from Mankato State University, Mankato, Minnesota, and a Bachelor of Divinity degree from Bethany Lutheran Theological Seminary, Mankato, Minnesota. He and his son Nathan currently farm, get this folks, 800 to 1,000 acres of corn and soybeans on the family farm in rural St. Peter. Alan and his wife Julie have 10 children and 35 grandchildren. So with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you tonight Mr. Alan Quist.
Well, I've learned I will always get a very gracious introduction from Sue, and so when I saw that she was going to introduce me, I thought, yes, this is the right way to start. Let me also introduce, I brought my right hand with me, my dear wife Julie, who up until a couple months ago was managing Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann's Minnesota office. And you want somebody who's politically astute. This is the lady. Julie, why don't you stand up so people can say hello? And let me mention just in terms of preliminaries, I did bring a handout that I saw was being passed around. I've noticed that when I speak, especially on things like Agenda 21, people start going in their purses and pockets and looking for something to write on because they want to take notes. And finally, I thought, why fight it? I'll just give you the notes and you can add if you want. But the information on there is what you're most likely to take down and take home. Also has a number of websites identified with the original sources, and so I invite you to make use of that. I also, upon request, have brought several of my books along, which are at the table. They're $10 cheap. And don't hesitate to buy one or more of those. We also have a sign-up sheet if you want us to send us information as it comes out. Add your information to our sign-up sheet. We don't sell it. We just put out information. So I was very interested in the number of you that raised your hands about being familiar with Agenda 21, and that because quite a few of you, or at least have heard of it. That makes you a pretty special group, because typically to a group this size, you're not going to get anybody. How many articles in the Star Tribune in 2011 did you see dealing with Agenda 21? Not any. What? Did you hear Rush Limbaugh talking about Agenda 21? You didn't. They're really... for the most part, is a media blackout with regards to this very important topic. But speaking of media blackouts, I just have to mention, too, that as we meet here tonight, the Occupy Wall Street whatever, dare I say demonstration, whatever you want to call it, fiasco, is going on. And I think it's very, very interesting that if you can identify what those folks are there for, and that's a big if, big question mark, it may relate somewhat to opposition to bailouts for Wall Street. I mean, I'm not going to be real dogmatic about that. I will be about some other things. But if that's one of the things that these folks are concerned about, I'd like to suggest that they need to do their research because they're barking up the wrong tree. With regards to bailouts, okay, the results of the partial audit of the Federal Reserve, and by the way, let me just mention here, what I'm going to say relates especially to Goal 2 of the Tea Party group, constitutional limited government, all right? And that's going to be true for my whole presentation. The partial audit of the Federal Reserve came out, if you can call it that. I mean, it was hard to find any information. Forbes has a good article, Business Insider has a good article, and that's about it. But anyway, the partial audit found that in the last 3 years, the Federal Reserve has put out at no interest loans, 0 interest. I have to talk to my banker. How about one of these 0 interest loans? You know, that might be, for my farm operation, that might be pretty handy. 0 interest loans. How many of you know the amount of money the Federal Reserve has put out without publicizing the amounts or who got it over the last 3 years? How many of you know the amount? When I see one hand, all right, I mean, it's there, but it's pretty hard to find. Hang on to your hats, because the Federal Reserve, and you didn't read this in the front page of the Star Tribune, the Federal Reserve has put out 16 trillion. That's trillion as in T. From 2007 to 2010, 0 interest loans to large banks, especially, and corporations, about 1/3 of them with headquarters in the United States, 2/3 headquartered in other countries. Okay, how much money is that? That is more than our gross domestic product. That is more than our entire national debt, and that's a big number, without our knowledge and certainly without our consent. So I mention that in part so that we can get the idea, maybe the media isn't always telling us the whole story. Do you think? And I say that because what I'm going to say tonight has not been reported generally in the media. But I am going to give you the factual statements on everything I say. And I hope you don't get tired of me reading quotations, because I want you to hear word for word what the documents say. I'm not here to give you my opinion. I'm here to give you the facts, word for word, what the documents say, and I'm going to borrow from Fox. I report, you decide. All right? And all I'm going to do is report. Okay, basics on Agenda 21. Let me start, though, with the first big mistake. If you talk to a legislator who has heard of Agenda 21, and I will tell you there were more hands that went up here than you're likely going to find in the legislature of people who have heard of Agenda 21. Same thing for D.C. The left knows exactly what it is. Republicans, as a rule, don't have a clue. And so they are sitting ducks, obviously. Okay? Agenda 21, let's start with the basics. Agenda 21 was an agreement reached at a UN-sponsored conference, UN as in United Nations, held back in 1992. So the legislator that knows something about it is going to say, oh yeah, that was that thing 19 years ago, that's ancient history. Ha-ha, guess again. Yes, it was 19 years ago, but it is being implemented today in Minnesota and in our country as we speak. So now is when the rubber is actually hitting the road. Was signed by then President George Herbert Walker Bush. Keep in mind, Republicans have their fingers in this too, not just the Democrats. Okay, Republicans have their fingers in it too, and we have to be aware of that. Now, Agenda 21 came out of this conference that was known as the Earth Summit. also sometimes called the Rio Summit 19 years ago. What is it? It's two things. It's a treaty, but it's also an action plan. Now, imagine if you were coaching the Minnesota Vikings, all right, and somebody gave you the playbook of the team you're playing next week. Do you think you'd have some interest in seeing what their plays were? I think so. This is the playbook of the left. It's not only a treaty. It's the playbook of the left. Worldwide left, American left, Minnesota left. It's their playbook. And so if you want to know what plays they're going to run, hey, here it is. And so what I'm going to talk about here very briefly are the plays that are coming. Now, I want to go then to a statement from the UN itself with regards to what Agenda 21 is. And for those of you that have the handout, this is item 2. And I wanted you to see exactly how the UN itself describes its own treaty. Not my opinion, all right? Not my spin. This is what the UN says, and I quote, Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action. Comprehensive, what does that mean? It's big, all right? To be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations. Who does that leave out? It leaves out the people, you got it. It leaves out the voters, but I mean, they're pretty well covering the waterfront other than the people, you got that right. Of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups. Are you a major group? Sure, I mean, this is what they're saying. This covers everybody. In every area in which humans impact the environment. Now, when you drove here tonight, unless you, well, not many of you walked, I drove. Did you impact the environment when you drove here? You're going to give me a hard time. How about some of you had the chicken, you know, did the person that raised that chicken impact the environment? I'll grant you they did, because some of the fertilizer went on my fields, and that impacted my environment in a good way, so that I am now green. That is, green with cash. That's the kind of green I like, all right? Did that impact the environment? I think it did. How about all these lights? Does generating those lights impact the environment? I think it does. What do we do that doesn't impact the environment? Not very much, right? So basically what the UN is saying is this treaty and action plan pretty much covers everything. And so this is the antithesis of constitutionally limited government. Agenda 21 is designed to be essentially unlimited in its breadth and depth and scope. I mean, this is about as big as it gets. And I warn you, when I show you what this involves, you're going to say, oh, I never had any idea. Okay? And just because it wasn't in the Star Tribune, don't dismiss it. So Agenda 21 is all about sustainable development. Oh, you've probably read about sustainable development in the Star Tribune, because everybody is for sustainable development, right? Sustainable development. I wonder what that means. Sustainable development. Julie and I have 35 grandkids. Is that sustainable development? So that's typical of the left. They aren't real quick to define their terms, like social justice. Oh, what does that mean? Does that mean taking my money and giving it to somebody else? Is that social justice? Of course, that is what they mean. So the reason a lot of people try to study Agenda 21 but never get their arms around it is because they don't define sustainable development. This is key. That's why I'm going to spend some time on it. You have to define sustainable development. And what I think it is doesn't matter. The question is, what is sustainable development to the UN? It's their program, their treaty. What does it mean to them? And that's what we're going to look at. Okay, now to define that, what does it mean to them? I'm going to quote the individual who was the secretariat for Agenda 21, and that is a international figure who has been one of the most influential people in the world. You never read about him in the Star Tribune, and that is an individual by the name of Maurice Strong. You want to know why our world is the way it is? I mean, Maurice Strong is one of the biggest players. Now, this is what Maurice Strong said about the Agenda 21 program and the Rio Treaty, and I quote word for word. "We decided to recommend to the preparatory committee that the conference be designed to produce a declaration of principles." It's kind of the antithesis of the Declaration of Independence. Our Declaration of Independence is the principles, the Constitution is the detail. All right? Declaration of Principles, which I propose should be in the form of an Earth Charter and a plan of action which should be called Agenda 21. And then on your notes I gave you the website and you can read this is exactly what Maurice Strong, and this is a guy who knows. I mean, he ran the conference. If he doesn't know, nobody else knows. So what he's saying is the principles are in the Earth Charter, the detail is in Agenda 21. But see, the detail, a lot of it is, well, it's kind of vague. I wonder what that means. Look at the Earth Charter. The Earth Charter defines Agenda 21 because, among other things, it defines what they mean by sustainable development. So what is sustainable development according to the Earth Charter? Well, in my handout, what is Agenda 21, I quote for you, I summarize for you what the Earth Charter says sustainable development means. And by the way, when you have a city council or you have commissioners or whatever who start saying, well, we're all about sustainable development, you better start asking some questions, all right? Because they may well be following the UN definition. What is sustainable development? Now, when you look at this list of items, you're going to say, oh, no, that can't be there. Hey, read the Earth Charter. I'm giving you the chapter and verse where you find this stated in the Earth Charter. What is sustainable development? It's point 5 in my handout. Number 1, and this is central to Agenda 21, income redistribution. All right? If I was going to use more contemporary language, I would say spread the wealth around. All right? It's kind of like my dad, who was a dairy farmer, used to say about manure. He said manure is like money. It doesn't do any good unless you spread it around. And of course, he said that in fun. Obama means it. All right? So income redistribution is key. Now, how do you go about redistributing the income? And I'm going to give applications to a lot of these things as I go on. How do you go about redistributing the income? I am a researcher, all right? And I am going to take credit for some of the things that I have discovered that nobody else knows. But one of the things I discovered in studying Obamacare, the health care plan, is that the health care plan, among other things, is a massive income redistribution scheme. And Michelle Bachmann, to her credit, has made an issue of this, but there too, the media just doesn't want to report this. How is it an income redistribution scheme? Well, when we were coming here, we were listening to Jason Lewis talking about how basically half the public doesn't pay any income tax and the other half does. Well, the way Obamacare is set up, people below the middle will get very cheap health insurance. If you're above the middle, you pay everything. All right? That's the way it's set up. Why? If people are under 400% of the poverty level, they get all the benefits and they pay almost nothing. It is income redistribution on steroids. Now, is that just coincidental? I'm just going to raise the question, all right? I'm just going to raise the question. I report, you decide. But it is massive income redistribution. By the way, there's also a huge marriage penalty there. I'm the guy that discovered that too. Two people making a combined income of $60,000, if they're not married, will have cheap health insurance. Those same two people, if they're married, will pay about $15,000. All right? All right, look at the Heritage Foundation study. By the way, I'm the one that broke the story. All you have to do is Google my name, marriage penalty, you're going to find out, yeah, Quist is the guy. Well, I'm a researcher. I want to know. I don't trust the Star Tribune. All right? I want to know. All right. Income redistribution. Abortion on demand is part of the agenda. Gay rights, including gay marriage. Well, that makes sense because, I mean, homosexuals don't have nearly as many children as my wife and I do on average. Probably. Nuclear disarmament. All right, are we going to be a military superpower if we disarm our... get rid of our nuclear weapons, and I grant you other countries might say they are, but I assure you they aren't doing it, all right? Education that promotes sustainable development. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. Agenda 21 puts incredible stress on teaching kids sustainable development. What that means is indoctrinating kids in everything on the agenda. To the UN, education is not about knowledge and basic skills. That's not what it is. To the UN, education is about indoctrination in the worldview of the left. That's what they mean by it, all right? Socialized medicine, key to Agenda 21, sustainable development. And I can understand that. I mean, you don't want all these old people around that take resources to keep alive. So I'm sure, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Sure. Earth worship, all right, is a big part. The Biodiversity Treaty, and I'm going to tell you a short story about that. And then global government. These are some of the aspects of sustainable development according to the Earth Charter, which defines Agenda 21. I have to tell you a story about the Biodiversity Treaty so you don't get discouraged. All right? Agenda 21 is real discouraging. Biodiversity Treaty was a sidekick treaty to Agenda 21 passed by this same Earth Summit. 1994, 2 years later, it was on the floor of the U.S. Senate, and the backers of it had more than enough votes to ratify it in the U.S. Senate. The Biodiversity Treaty, talk about the opposite of limited government, the Biodiversity Treaty and land rights. The biodiversity is all about limiting human beings. And the Biodiversity Treaty, in essence, set aside 1/3 of the United States as being unsuitable, unavailable for human habitation. You couldn't even go there, all right? Another third was a buffer zone where you have extremely limited regulated use, and only 1/3 of the whole land mass would be available to what I do, to farm or for recreation, golf courses, whatever you like. I mean, this was radical to the core. So the backers of this treaty, it's on the floor of the Senate, 1994, it's coming up for a vote, said, oh, this, what is the treaty all about? No, just first sign it and then you'll find out. That's pretty much what, we kind of know how that works. One man by the name of Dr. Michael Kaufman knew there's more here than meets the eye, all right? And he had a contact in Europe who was able to get the fine print on this sucker. And he got that to Michael Kaufman the night before the Biodiversity Treaty was going to come up for a vote. By the way, our system of government, any treaty that's ratified by the Senate, Agenda 21 has not been. But it's the policy of the executive branch. That's what we call soft law. Anyway, would have had the same standing as the Constitution had it been ratified. Overnight, Dr. Michael Kaufman took the stipulations of the treaty and drew a map of the United States that described what it's going to look like once the treaty is ratified. All you have to do is do a search for Michael Kaufman, C-O-F-F-M-E-N, biodiversity, and you can see the map. All right? So when the senators came in the next day, on everybody's desk there was a map of what the United States would look like after they signed the treaty. The backers of the treaty took one look at the map and said, you know what? I don't think we'll bring this up for a vote. Which they didn't. It was never voted on, all right? Thank God, because of the patriotic courage of one person, Dr. Michael Kaufman. Can you guys make a difference? Yes, you can make a difference. That's the only reason why we haven't ratified that part of Agenda 21. So anyway, you define what is involved in sustainable development, and you get a picture of how intrusive into our lives this is. All right, let's look at some of the ways this is affecting people in Minnesota, as well as in our country. And as I said, this has never been ratified by the Senate, and so it is not the law of the land in the United States or in Minnesota. But it was signed by then President Bush. Bill Clinton loved it. Obama, I'm sure, grooves on it. And I wish I could say that our Republicans rejected it, but they didn't. All right? They maybe didn't implement it as aggressively, but they implemented it too. Okay, what are some of the ways that it's being implemented? Let me count the ways. You probably read the poem, "Oh, I love you, let me count the ways." Well, here we're going to kind of do the opposite. Let's count some of the ways that this is affecting our life in the United States of America. And let's start with the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which somebody suggested we maybe don't need. The EPA, some months ago, made a ruling that carbon dioxide, now this is what we are breathing out all the time, all right? This is a natural part of our atmosphere. That carbon dioxide is a pollutant. Oh, really? I want to say scientifically, I'm just reporting the facts. You decide if that's good, but I'm going to give you my opinion on this one. I mean, carbon dioxide is a pollutant. I mean, you might as well say that human beings are inherently pollutants. You might as well say that Labrador retrievers, I don't care, what's your favorite, you know? The Vikings, Obama, there's what I'm going to agree with. Obama is a pollutant, that follows. You're saying that part of the natural environment is a pollutant? I mean, this is absolute, from a scientific point of view, this is total nonsense. What's it about? It's about controlling our lives, folks. The EPA, having given itself the authority under the Clean Air Act to regulate carbon dioxide, means it can do anything it wants. All right? I mean, this is not limited government, folks. This is unlimited government. Okay, what else? Let's take cap and trade. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Minnesota passed a cap and trade bill several years ago. What was it called? The new energy something, the Next Generation Energy Act, okay? That included a major section on cap and trade. And our former governor, Pawlenty, said, oh, that's not cap and trade. Guess what? There's a fact check group that read the bill and said, ha-ha, no, this is cap and trade. In 2010, the U.S. House passed a cap and trade bill. By the way, the Heritage Foundation studied to see how much this would cost the average family of four. I tell you, it costs our family a heck of a lot more. What they found, Heritage Foundation, this would cost the average family of four $6,800 per year in added energy costs, hidden and direct, with no measurable positive effect on the environment. Zero! Now, in my business, I call that a waste of money or worse. Now, why is this, what's this all about? Well, cap and trade means you put a cap on how much carbon dioxide we can emit here in the United States. And trade means, in order to do business, you have to buy carbon credits from South Africa and Argentina, all right, and China, and countries like this. It's all about income redistribution. It's all about that. And there are various individuals. There's a top person in the UN panel group, Otmar Edenhofer, who says, get this out of your mind, that that international climate policy is about the environment. It's all about income redistribution. That's all it is. That's all it is. So does the left want to pass this in D.C.? Yeah. And if the right people get in, they're going to do it. Okay, what are some of the other things? Well, I have to mention the educational program, International Baccalaureate. And on the back of the handout, I listed, it's about 17 schools in Minnesota, all of them metro except two, that are offering International Baccalaureate as part of their education program. What is International Baccalaureate? Well, it's a UN education program. All right? International Baccalaureate is an organization of UNESCO, which is a branch of the UN. Why is that important? Well, guess what values are going to be taught in International Baccalaureate? In fact, when a school signs a contract with International Baccalaureate, the proponents are never going to tell you this, the contract says that the values of International Baccalaureate will be taught in every major class in the school. And IB comes in and trains the teachers, all right? at your taxpayer expense. That's what they forgot to tell the public. That's what the Star Trib forgot to tell you this is all about. So what are the values of the UN? Okay, is this limited government? Give me a break. This is total control. Is this fiscal responsibility? No, it's all income redistribution. It's all spread the manure around. That's what it is. And so the UN program, IB, subsidized by Minnesota taxpayer monies out of the capital, subsidized out of Washington, D.C., with our taxpayer money, funded by the local school districts with our taxpayer money. Why in heaven's name are we letting people use our tax money to run a UN education program in our schools? I mean, are we all useful idiots or what? That is in fact what's going on. Now, International Baccalaureate exists to carry out the wishes of UNESCO, this branch of the UN, and this branch of the UN was assigned the responsibility of implementing all the education aspects of Agenda 21. That's what it's all about, folks. It's all about Agenda 21 being taught to our kids, indoctrinated into our kids. All right, I'm going to mention one or two other things, then I'd love to have some comments and questions. ICLEA. And on the back of the sheet are some local governments in Minnesota that have joined ICLEI. Edina, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Blue Earth County, sad to say, I don't live there, close. Minneapolis, Northfield, St. Paul, Minneapolis twice, that's a typo, Mankato, Duluth, all belong to ICLEI. What is ICLEI? Well, ICLEI is Local Governments for Sustainability is what they call themselves now. If you go to the ICLI website, and I put this on the on your handout, ICLI says, and I quote, "With the local agenda movement now almost 20 years old, the time is right to examine our progress. ICLI has been a part of the local sustainability movement from the very beginning." That's from the ICLI website. They make numerous statements there besides that are much more direct than this one, saying ICLI exists to implement Agenda 21 in local governments. That's what it is. Okay, that's what ICLEI is. Just go to their website. They're very explicit. Now, why in heaven's name are we going to let our tax money be used by our local governments to implement Agenda 21? That's what it's all about. Why? Because people don't have a clue. Do you think city council members know that this is what ICLEI is about? Only if you tell them. All right? You now have some marching orders. You better let people know what this is, because that's what it's all about. Okay, you've got the Rural Development Council, obviously implementation of Agenda 21, and then I'm going to just mention one more thing because it's so big, and then let's have some questions and answers. I am often asked to speak on No Child Left Behind. In fact, a couple years ago, I was at the Arizona Senate Education Committee and the House Education Committee in Arizona at their request, describing what's going on with No Child Left Behind. And interestingly, it happened to be the day when the teachers union was visiting the Capitol. And so as I'm here talking to the committee members like I'm talking to you, I've got 200 public school teachers behind me, all right? And I can't see any of them, and my back is exposed, but I can't see any of them. But I knew what was going to happen, and it did, because the teachers can't stand the federal government's No Child Left Behind. And constitutionally limited government? I don't think so. But anyway, the teachers don't like it. And so as I'm telling the legislators about No Child Left Behind, I'm hearing behind me, yes! And then I'm hearing behind me, and then I'm hearing behind me, preach it, brother! Well, not quite, but it's something like that. Then they start applauding, all right? Public school teachers, they start applauding, and they applaud more. And the more I'd say what it is, the more they say, that's exactly what it is, all right? What is No Child Left Behind? Well, two facts about it, and I document the first one in my book, America's Schools. No Child Left Behind is designed to fulfill the requirements of an international education agreement known as EFA, Education for All, and it is point by point. And in my book, I take the treaty and I take No Child Left Behind, and if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, I'll tell you, it's a duck, all right? So it exists to fulfill an international agreement. Now, what are the goals of No Child Left Behind? What are the goals? How many of you think the goal of No Child Left Behind is about raising the academic achievement of all our students? How many of you think that's the goal of No Child? You know, oh no, that would be true. That would be, that would be something I could support. All right? It's not what it's about. No Child Left Behind is 100% about closing the gaps in socioeconomic groups. No Child Left Behind says that if you happen to live here in Arden Hills and you have kids in the Arden Hills schools, your kids cannot score higher than the kids in downtown Minneapolis. That's what it says. The state of Minnesota, under No Child Left Behind, must have the scores of the kids in downtown Minneapolis the same as the kids in Arden Hills. That's what it says. Failing schools, and they're all over the place now, are schools that are having a hard time doing that. And of course, I just say as a teacher, hey, I'm a teacher. I'm not a miracle worker. But that's what it requires. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to have the scores the same? Because the left knows that education achievement and income are very closely correlated. How are you going to equalize the income of everybody? You're going to do it by having the same scores. That's what it's all about. Ladies and gentlemen, this is right out of the UN. It's right out of, it fulfills one of the biggest stipulations of Agenda 21. It's all about spreading the wealth around by dumbing down the education for our average and best kids. So I've just scratched the surface on Agenda 21. These are some of the things that you need to look for. It's huge. It's affecting our lives in a big way. And the reason I love you Tea Party people is you want to know, you want to get to the bottom of it, and you need to do that with Agenda 21. Not for me.
Give him a big hand. Don't go away. Yeah, we're going to take questions. I'm going to walk around, so you raise your hand. I already have one over here. But before we start that, do we have elected officials here? We forgot to say, please stand up. Peggy Scott. I got to tell you, she's working hard for you. I drive her nuts. All righty, first question right over here. Kind of come as here.
Hi, Alan. Bill Glahn, Edina, Minnesota. I can tell you, Edina is signed on to everything that comes along around about this.
Yeah.
But I guess I have a question about tactics, because as you did at the very beginning when you asked for the show of hands, you talk about what's going on at the UN, you talk about Agenda 21, and when you're talking to city council people, county commissioners, no idea what you're talking about. But you mentioned you didn't read about it in the Star Tribune. I read about it in the Star Tribune every single day, but what they talk about is complete streets, like we had the project down in North St. Paul. They talk about Green Step Cities, which is a pollution control agency program.
Right.
A lot more cities have signed on to Green Step Cities than any of these other things.
Right.
Or it's the renewable energy, the wind project down in Goodhue County.
Right.
That's how it's manifesting itself.
Right.
So wouldn't we be better off to focus on how it manifests itself in the communities? So we talk about complete streets, what's wrong with complete streets? We talk about Green Step Cities, what's wrong with Green Step Cities? Because that's what's on the City Council agenda.
Right.
Agenda 21 is not on the agenda.
Right, right. But very, very good question. Why don't we deal with the things that are going on locally? Two things. Number one, the UN has advised groups implementing Agenda 21 to not use the term Agenda 21. All right? And so you're usually not going to find the label. It's usually labeled other things like those that you mentioned, and I'm going to add some more. Smart growth, okay, biodiversity, wildlands. These are all synonyms for the same program. What do you look for? Central planning, number one. This is one of the chief characteristics of Agenda 21. It's all top-down, managed, whatever it is, from people on the top, so that individuals have very limited freedom. What else do you look for? Look for anything that crowds people together. All right, high rises, all apartments. They don't want people living out in the suburbs, owning their own homes. Look for mass transit. Why don't you add the high-speed rail? I mean, why don't you add the rail? That's key to Agenda 21. So all these things are part of the program. Now, so the question is, how do you deal with it? You deal with it by getting informed. Now, Agenda 21 is so big that I tried to give you some highlights, and you've filled in a lot of the pieces beautifully. But that's what you have to do. You have to fill in some of these pieces and keep it up, because that's critical.
Next question back here, Alan.
Yes. How do you feel about Herman Cain being very high up in the Federal Reserve? I was really excited about him until I heard this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, question, how do I feel about Herman Cain being very high up in the Federal Reserve? Now you asked me an opinion, and I'm going to give you an opinion. Normally I just try to give information, but you asked for an opinion. My opinion is that, considering the field of presidential candidates, Herman Cain should be pretty high on the list, because he's got some real strengths, Does he have some warts? He doesn't understand the Federal Reserve. Now keep in mind, he was on a board of one of the regional organizations. He wasn't on the board of the main Federal Reserve. Those people are all, by the way, appointed by the president, all right? So the president has control. So he was one of the regional organizations. I don't know that there's a problem with the regional organizations. It might be, but I'm just not aware of it. So in my opinion, he never got an accurate picture of how the Fed operates, because he was on a regional organization, not on the main board. That's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But boy, there's a lot I like about Herman Cain.
Next question.
All right.
Yeah, Alan, thank you for getting word out on this. This is something that I've been called a conspiracy theorist for years, and people just wouldn't believe it, and it's finally starting to come out now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like you said, this is a huge subject. It really is involved and touches every part of everybody's life. But you mentioned Michael Kaufman. There's another Michael involved in that, Dr. Michael Shaw.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful man.
Has done a lot of work, and they have a website called Freedom Advocates, where there's a lot of information available if anybody wants to look.
Yeah.
Another aspect.
By the way, these are both close personal friends of mine, and I have the highest regard for both of them. They do great work, Michael Shaw and Michael Kaufman. Go ahead.
Another aspect of this that is very rarely ever mentioned and never really gone into, and that is population reduction.
Right. Yeah.
Next question right back here.
Very good. I agree. Population reduction is high on the scale. That's why these people hate me. I've given them good reason. Yes.
I'm Denise Zern. I live in St. Louis Park. I've had 4 children in the St. Louis Park schools, which is a school district that's about the shape and size of the city. St. Louis Park has fully implemented the International Baccalaureate program at the high school, and it has rolled it out through the grade schools, and their next plan is to put it into their middle schools. I would not advise anyone to put a child into the government schools in St. Louis Park. But this program was sold at the high school as an excellence program. It's considered more rigorous than the other coursework at the high school. St. Louis Park has a large contingent of wealthy, very highly educated people with their children in the public schools, and those top students all go into the International Baccalaureate program. And as it was implemented, it replaced honors classes that other kids were involved with, and it kind of took over the entire structure of the curriculum more every year over a period of several years.
Exactly.
I had a kid graduate. She's 21. At her graduation, that was called the #2 school in Minnesota. It's one of the top 250 schools in the U.S., rated by U.S. News, because it has an international baccalaureate program. How do you explain to people something that is sold as excellence and bought into by some of the leaders in the community? How do you deal with that in any way?
Okay, thank you. The question is excellent. Because this question is so important, I'm going to take 2 or 3 minutes on it because this question is extremely important. The question is, how do you, let me say, cut through the propaganda on International Baccalaureate insofar as it's supposedly being an excellent academic program? All right, how do you do that? Let me mention a couple of things. First off, the backers of IB will never tell you how much it costs. All right, they'll tell you how much it costs to join and how much you directly pay to IB, but most of the cost is in-service training for teachers. And that always shows up in the budgets in places other than IB. So I will just tell you, as parents and as citizens, you are not going to get accurate figures on how expensive it is. Number two, there's a program that's a lot less expensive known as advanced placement that is valued much more highly by colleges and universities. So if you want advanced programs, go to advanced placement. It's a U.S. program. It's not a UN program. It's less expensive. And IB bemoans the fact that students in AP are in better position going to colleges and universities. Okay, now let me expose the biggie. You mentioned one on the list, what was it, 2 or in the list of the 250 best schools in Newsweek, all right? And you have some idea of how that formula is arrived at, which, I mean, this lady is 1 in a million because almost nobody knows any of this. Here's the way it works, folks. Every year, Newsweek magazine in about June publishes a feature article called America's Best Schools. And sometimes they identify the 100 best schools, sometimes it's 250, sometimes they have a bigger list, 1,000. It's always, every year, they came out with this list, America's Best Schools. Within 2 weeks after that, International Baccalaureate always put out a press release touting the fact that its schools did well on the ranking of the 100 best schools. They did that every year except 2011. And I rarely toot my own horn, but this time I'm going to. And I'm going to tell you the reason they didn't do it this year is I'm the guy that exposed the fraud in what IB was doing. All right? I'm the guy. I'm a researcher. I want to know. And so let me tell you how this worked, folks. I wanted to know, okay, how is Newsweek arriving at the schools that it picks, let's say in the 100 best? I mean, he would have the 100 best and the 10 best, and IB would come out with their press release that would say, of the 10 best schools in America, 6 out of the 10 are IB schools. And, of course, that sounds really, really good. They would hand this information to school board members, legislators, and give them the propaganda. Look at how well IB schools do. You want to support this program. All right? So I want to know the formula. How does Newsweek calculate the formula, and what kook in education put it together? Well, I found, thank God, nobody in education put the formula together. It was a journalist by the name of Jay Matthews, who happens to write materials for IB. Gee, fox guarding the hen house here? Here's the formula for the best schools, according to Newsweek until this year. Here's the formula. You take the number of AP, which is not that big, or IB exams given in a year in the school divided by the number of graduates. So as your graduation goes down, your score goes up. So you want to have as many people leave as possible. Now, notice it didn't say anything about whether the students passed. I mean, I'm a teacher. I have an interest in whether my students pass. I mean, I don't mind giving them tests, but I want to know, did they pass? Nothing about whether students passed. Nothing about their scores. So what did schools do to get high on the list? They just gave a lot of tests. They joined IB. I mean, smart principals and superintendents said, let's join IB and we'll give a lot of tests and we will be in the top 10 in the nation. That, in fact, is what happened. This formula had nothing to do, nothing, zero, with academic achievement. None whatsoever. It was a total fraud to push IB. Now, I blew the whistle on that a year ago, all right? I didn't know if anybody was listening, but I found out, guess what? Newsweek was listening. And Newsweek changed the formula. All right? They didn't have any choice. I mean, they were looking like absolute whatever. I better watch my language. They weren't looking good. So expose the 100 best schools fraud to people who believe in IB. And then go to the University of Minnesota catalog or any catalog and show them how AP classes are accepted versus IB. And they will find out that AP is far superior.
Next question. Yep. We're going to have one more after this lady.
Okay, and I'm going to give short answers.
Promise?
The No
No.
Child Left Behind, does that also include these kids that are playing games and soccer and they don't want to give who's winning and who got this? Is this part of it, the web? And I'm feeling that after hearing you, that's part of it. They don't want any competition.
Well said, and I don't need to comment. So just go. Well said.
Right here. This is our last question.
They don't want grades either. You know, they don't want grades. They don't want A, B, C, D, and F. I say to my students, "You want me to treat you all the same, right?" They say, "Yeah." That means I don't care what you get in the tests. You're all going to get C's. Oh no, that is not exactly what we had in mind. Oh, you want me to reward your achievement? Yeah. Oh, all right. I'll do that.
Alan, quick question.
Yes.
As far as the light rail goes, I'm realizing now it's going to be coming out to Eden Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get into the Met Council? How do you get to the Met Council?
Why have a Met Council? Question is how to get to the Met Council. Get rid of it.
Well, and
I mean, elect legislators who are committed to eliminating the Met Council. The Met Council, I mean, is this limited government, Met Council? I don't think so. I mean, this is just another layer.
Talk to Peggy Scott. Talk to Peggy Scott. There's a team getting together to work on that.
Good.
All righty.
Okay, thank you.
Don't go anywhere.
Oh.
I just...
Thank you so much.
Pardon?
Come on,
Can we
Sue.
do one more?
Sure, it doesn't matter to me.
Come on, Sue. It was your birthday yesterday.
I know I'm cheating the system. I know. Isn't that what it's about?
Yes.
Yes, Richard. My question, Alan, is could you share with us the elite, the people who are behind the scenes and their organizations they belong to, so we
Yes.
can look them up?
The people behind the scenes and the organizations they belong to, I want to go right to the top because I really need to give you the big picture on this. Our country was founded largely on the thought of John Locke, okay? Ideas have consequences. Our country is built on ideas. The left, including IB, including Agenda 21, including Obama, including Clinton, is based on the thought of a British economist, if you can call him that, by the name of Anthony Giddens. All right? And again, you're not going to see his name. And this Anthony Giddens is perhaps the most influential person in the Western world. Why? Because Anthony Giddens, as an economist, says free enterprise works, but you have to spread the wealth around. All right? You have to regulate, spread the wealth around. That's the name of the game. His economics is called third way. Clinton used to talk about this all the time in his speeches, the third way. What is that? Anthony Giddens. All right? Now, not in the last Republican debate, but the debate before, Newt Gingrich was asked the question, is Obama a socialist? Newt said, but of course. Then Romney was asked the question, well, I would call him a liberal. Either those folks on the stage didn't know or were unwilling to say, Obama is a follower of the third way, Anthony Giddens. You have some socialism, but you have some free enterprise, highly regulated, but it's all about spreading the wealth around so that everybody is the same. Anthony Giddens is the Western world's #1 advocate of world government. All right? #1. Close friends with Obama, close friends with Tony Blair, close friends with Clinton. You need to know, folks, this is the bottom line. All right? In all of this, this is the bottom line. This is the bottom line. This is why people work like dogs, because they believe in this utopian dream. Look up Anthony Giddens, read about him. Look up Amitai Edzioni, E-T-Z-I-O-N-I, close friend to Bill Clinton. Read all about him. Who are these people? They're all people who say the time is here to adopt global government. Now, I'm going to predict that sometime in the next 5 years, there's going to be a massive global economic crisis, and the solution that is going to be pushed by the powers that be is, gee, I guess being a nation doesn't work anymore. We all have to become part of a UN-sponsored, headed global governance system. This, my friends, is the real agenda. And nobody is willing to say it except very few. This is the bottom line. Watch out, okay? If anybody is going to stop this, it's going to be the Tea Party patriots. Okay? You're the guy.
Thank you, Alan.
You're the guy. You're the guy. Nobody else is going to stop it. You're the guy.
Thank you. He's just a spring bubbling over constantly. He's so much to give. But when the task looks overwhelming, look around. The people here are from all over the area. They're not 5 minutes away. And this is growing because we're feeding people solid, honest, truthful information.